and welcome to Just Onside. It's the 1st of January, so Happy New Year for those who follow the Gregorian calendar. I'm not sure if you follow the Gregorian calendar, OS. So how are you, and Happy New Year?
You've been working on your vocab. Clearly, Ayub. No, happy New Year to you too, Ayub. It is the 1st of January. I've got my birthday in a few days as well. Should be turning 27. So, no, all good. But
You've had a tough paper round.
indeed. But an early New Year present for you today, Ayub. Come on, we'll give you the floor. It's
Yeah,
a good win for yourselves.
excellent win. I mean, it's just past 5 o'clock, so I've been a little bit tense, but it was actually okay in the end because we we were 3 up in about sort of 70 minutes, so it was always going to be a reasonably comfortable win. And when you've had 2 defeats, the team you want to play is Rooney's Birmingham. He's all over the place, Big Rooney is. So I'm not sure if he's going to last the week, Big Wayne Rooney. But excellent result. Other teams that are in the top, Southampton drew, Ipswich drew as well, which is really good. So it sort of makes up for two disappointing results, two really awful performances, and really when you're going for automatic promotions, you can't afford to be dropping points. So it was nice to get back to winning ways. Nice that Southampton and Ipswich didn't have wins, but we're still quite a few points behind. But I'm a happy bunny at this moment in time.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? When Leeds lose, you don't have any hesitation to lay into your manager, Daniel Farker. Before that, before you chose Daniel Farker to be your latest victim, before that, it was the old your number 9, I should say. And didn't he? I think he scored his first goal in the championship today, didn't he? He scored in the
He did, yeah,
opening
Paddy
goal.
Bamford. Yeah, he
Paddock
started.
Bamford.
He actually started, and he actually led the line really well. And I'm delighted for him. He's been, he still is somebody that we should ship out this month. But fair play to him. At the end of the day, he started the game. He played well. It's sort of. I think this is his level, and he was actually okay. He wasn't too bad. He scored a goal, so
Well,
it was nice.
it's taken as the best part of about 74 episodes, Ayub. But that might be the first nice thing you've said about Patrick Bamford. We got there. We
It
got
may be the
there. We
last.
got. Is it your New Year resolution to be nice about?
Well, I suppose. I mean, I'm a fair man. At the end of the day, if you produce the goods, I'll be fair. If you don't produce the goods, I'll let you know. But with Falk, I still say he's not a good coach. And again, today, it wasn't his tactics. We were playing against an awful Birmingham side, which has been coached. I mean, if there is a worse coach than Falk, it's Wayne Rooney. So
It's a bit harsh. It's a bit harsh.
and it wasn't again. It's never to do with coaching. We've got quality players. And then with just a few moments of decent quality, but against a poor opposition, it had to be a must-win, and we did win. So I'm quite happy, quite delighted. And on to the cup. I think on the weekend we play Peterborough.
Just on a separate point, Ayub. Obviously Rooney. So 3-0 win today. Putting Rooney in a bit of a difficult position, isn't he? I mean, he took over a team that was, by all intents and purposes, doing quite well in the championship, albeit it was early on in the season. Getting rid of a fan's favourite as well, with regards to the manager as well. So bringing in a high-profile name. Obviously, they had a few ownership changes, notably bringing in Tom Brady as an investor of some sort. Do you think he's going to see this rough period out? It's tough to see, don't you think?
It's a tough one. I mean, it's a decision that the owners made. Now, maybe that's probably going to give him a little bit more time because it's a decision that wasn't well received by the fans because Birmingham were doing okay. I'm not sure who the manager was, whether it was McKenna. As I said, I forget the name of the manager, but he was doing okay. He'd actually had a slight wobble at the start of the season, but he was doing all right. So to remove a manager who's well liked by the fans, who's doing okay, was a high risk strategy. Now, this is the reason why, because they brought Rooney in, maybe they've just got to give him a little bit more time. But the problem is, it's just getting bad to worse. There seems to be no style of play. Rooney, and he's an experienced coach now. He's not somebody who's an absolute novice. He did okay with Derby under very trying circumstances in the Championship. So he's somebody who knows the league. But I don't know. I mean, I think if it wasn't for the circumstances that he was brought in, I think he'd be out. he'd be out. But I've just got a feeling that maybe they might just give him a few more weeks. But really, if they carry on the way they are, there's absolutely no way that Rooney's going to last the season. So,
Yeah.
who cares about Birmingham?
I was just going to say, just very quickly on that, though, it's an interesting one, isn't it? When the owners are the ones who've taken a decision which raises some eyebrows, right? By removing a manager that was doing well by all
Mm,
intents and purposes and bringing in a high profile name. You're right. They're probably always more willing to give a longer leash, let's say, because it
mm.
obviously justifies their decision if they can see Rooney turn this around. It's just that they are flirting at the wrong end of the table. I mean, there's still a little bit of a gap to QPR, who are third to bottom, but just it's not getting better for him, is it? And another heavy defeat. Um, I think if they flirt any more with relegation, I wouldn't be surprised if they do kind of bite the bullet and move on, which would be quite the blow to his managerial hopes moving forward, I think.
It probably will be. I mean, I'd be surprised if he's courted by many sides because he's as I said at Derby. I mean, that was where the mistake was. I think he should have stayed at Derby, albeit they got relegated. But they I think they had points deducted. They had all sorts of issues, and maybe sort of going to America wasn't the right choice because that's not football. That's show business. But Birmingham are in trouble. Rooney is in trouble. Another team that is in trouble, the Arsenal. I
You
said the
need
wheels were coming off.
you need to work on your segues. No, but that was a good one. That was a good one. I'll give you that.
But it's when you're going for the title, 2 losses on the bounce is and obviously prior to that there was a draw as well. So 1 point out of 9. It's a mini crisis, surely. And against Fulham, you would have expected Arsenal to get a good result against Fulham. They've not been in great form. So to lose against Fulham, there must be concern now, surely. As an Arsenal fan, you must be worried.
If you're talking from the perspective of challenging for the Premier League title, you're right. That looks a long way away right now because that performance belied any real confidence, rhythm, any form whatsoever. And it's really interesting, right? I think it's an interesting case study because you think to yourself, they had a really quality home win against Brighton. I mean, Brighton are probably not quite at the levels that they've been at previously. I don't
Mm,
think they've kept a clean sheet this season, but it was a really good resounding win against a team that's been a bogey team for them at the Emirates. They then play, most observers would say a draw was probably a fair point, but they acquitted themselves very well. They were very competitive against Liverpool at Anfield, which is a tough place to go, right?
mm,
And then you think, right, off the back of that, go on. And against West Ham, it was a very unusual game, right? We spoke about it. I still thought Arsenal was some way short of their high level and standards. You can talk about the stats and the shots and all that, but I watched the game and I always say the eye test is the most important one. And there was a certain level of confidence that left them a little bit after that first goal went in. It was they didn't play with the same rhythm, the same speed. Yes, Havertz probably was a big miss given West Ham played quite a low block and what have you, and that could have helped. But look, it was one. I don't think you can point to players being missed or what have you. They didn't quite have the belief it seemed that they were going to get back into the game, and in the end, they lost. Yesterday, however, as Mikel Arteta spoke about after the game, Ayub, that was one of the worst performances that I've seen in recent times under Mikel Arteta, and that's the reason why I say it's an interesting case study for me. Is that I think it was genuinely a continuation from what was quite the wobble against West Ham. I mean, Arsenal don't really have too many poor results at home. They'll draw the odd game, but they don't lose too many at home, not under this current Mikel Arteta team. So the fact that they lost, they didn't score. I think it was as though they thought maybe we'll get to Fulham and we'll try and sneak it. If you remember last year, that was one of their best performances away at Craven Cottage. They won 3-0,
mm.
very comfortable. The game was pretty much done and dusted at half time. It was genuinely one of their best performances under this Mikel Arteta's kind of tenure. Yet yesterday was as though they were just trying to scrap their way. And when they got the goal ahead, it was as though, all right, good. Let's just control our way through this. I thought Fulham were well deserving of their 3 points. I thought they fought well, they ran well, they competed much better than Arsenal. I mean, the challenge Arsenal have, if you're asking me, is you watch the game. I imagine you watch the game in its entirety. You watch the game, and there are times when they are so because they play this very slow, methodical, controlled style of football. Now, at 1-0, you think you do that, but it should always serve a purpose to kind of go forward. Look at the goal they scored, Ayub. Keeper gets it, rolls it out, one pass into
Mm.
Martinelli. Martinelli, it's space, it's running, it's athleticism, it's getting the pitch all stretched out, and they then get the goal from the save, from the rebound. And then when you look at what Arsenal were trying to do when they were 2-1 down, I mean, the game came to an absolute standstill. And the issues that you have when you bring the game to an absolute standstill are plentiful. A, you're letting the team get settled. B, teams find it much easier to double because your midfielders are much more closer to your defenders than it would be, let's say, if you stretched them out a little bit, if you played a game based on open, expansive style. And there's things that Arsenal can do to negate that, but they still persist with this really slow, kind of methodical control passing. And yesterday there were times, Ayub, when Declan Rice had the ball, Saliba had the ball, Gabriel had the ball, and the game just stopped. It literally stopped. I thought, has something happened? As in everyone just froze. It was like a freeze frame. And you're not going to beat teams without playing in a certain motion, with a certain speed, with a certain kind of, certain patterns and what have you. You see Saka getting doubled all the time. The reason is because, again, the midfield of Fulham was so close to defense of Fulham. It's just easier for the midfielder just to make a 5-yard run to cut off one side. And Arsenal right now, if you look at the statistics of the front three, it's nowhere near as good as what they had last year when Martinelli was scoring plenty, Saka was scoring plenty. Yes, Saka got on the score sheet yesterday, but they didn't really do much beyond that. I thought yesterday was the first time. I mean, many will have pointed to last year and say, well, they fell off at the end. But yesterday was the first time I watched them and thought, against a team that they should beat, let's be very clear, Fulham weren't coming into this off the back of great form. I think they'd lost home to Burnley. I think they'd lost 3 games on the bounce without scoring or what have you. So it wasn't as though they were playing a team that was just in a little bit of good form as well. It was the fact that they were second best all around and they were quite timid and quite weak. And I just have to believe that's because of the confidence that betrayed them after the defeat against West Ham. So I think, look, I think from a title perspective, I think it's pretty, I think it's stupid to talk about the title right now. I do still think they've got time to recover that form. I still think they're a good team. But yesterday was not the type of signs, not the type of performance that you want to see from a team where you go a goal up, you should not be losing the game. They might peg you back. I mean, don't forget, Fulham got a point at the Emirates early on this season, so they've taken 4 points of Arsenal in their 2 games. But it was a performance that told me a little bit that there's a certain that the confidence has betrayed them, and I was surprised at that. I thought the results that they've got over the last 18 months would have given them enough kind of equity, enough kind of credit in the bank to make them to not put those performances forward. West Ham was a different. I think you could put that as a one-off to some extent, but clearly it was a sign of things to come. And right now, they're not a very confident team. Why? I'm not so sure because again, Brighton and Liverpool were, I thought, very good performances on the whole. So yeah, title. I think that's a little far-fetched right now. I think this break may come at a good time. Is it fatal for their title hopes? I don't think so. I don't believe in that. I still think there's plenty of time to recover this. You've got all the second games left, if that makes sense, all the return legs against all your big rivals and what have you. They need to get back to doing the basics right, Ayub. And that's the fundamentals of trying to win a football game, which is you play quick, you move teams around, and if you move teams around quickly and sharply, you'll then see how football becomes a lot easier. And they've got the players to do that. But right now, there's a certain confidence that has belied them right now.
I didn't hear what Arteta said post-match. So what was his comments? What was his explanation for this quite mediocre performance?
Well, he called it quite painful. He did say it was one of the worst performances, if not the worst performance. And I think when you looked at Arteta on the touchline yesterday as well, he made some changes. It made Arsenal worse. I'm not criticising him because I think he was just trying to. If you remember, there was a period in the second half where the rain came down. Absolutely, it was torrential. So I think there was a period in the game where nobody was going anywhere for about 10 minutes, just high winds, high rain. But the performance just the substitutes didn't make any impact whatsoever. I didn't really see anybody. I didn't see any patterns whatsoever. Leno had nothing to do in the second half. Yes, Saka missed that chance, but again, Arsenal were so poor. Fulham were much, much the better team in my humble opinion. He didn't really offer any reasons. I think he spoke about the fact that look, January the transfer window. I don't hear that. I don't want to hear that. That's not going to be the savior. And I think that's the right message to send to that squad. And for me, I'm not one of those who believes in that as well. I'm like, look, that squad's good enough to compete, in my humble opinion. I'm not going to point to players coming in or we need a striker, we need that. Clearly, there's issues within the squad and there's some injuries. But look, that's There's no victim mentality over here. You go forward and you keep playing and you compete. That squad, that team is good enough to compete. So many are saying this is their blip. I think this is a sign of, look, the league's hard, the league's tough, and if you don't do the basics, which is respect each team, move the ball around, and be confident to impose your own personality, which they've been very good at for the most part over the last 24 months. That's why I'm not going to, throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's a case of they've probably earned the right to prove us wrong, let's say, but that was a very timid and weak performance. And the fact that they couldn't put together any real chances after falling 2-1 down suggested a little bit of a lack of know-how as to, well, how do we go about creating opportunities? How do we go about recovering this? And that would, for me, was the most worrying part. It's not so much they lost because they deserved to lose. It was the fact that at 2-1 down, you expect a little bit of an onslaught. You expect a little bit of second balls, overloads, 1-2s, crosses, pen the team in. The other team's got to feel the pressure like, bloody hell, it's coming, it's coming. There was none of that. I thought Fulham, if anything, had the opportunity to make it 3-1. So I think it was one of those days, but Arsenal again will have to prove to the league and to themselves, I guess, that they can come again. I think they've got the games to, and I think they have the game to, the players, the talent. But yesterday was a worrying sign from a title challenging perspective. That was nothing like it. That was a very mediocre. That was relegation type form. That was.
I agree. I'm not sure exactly what's happened, whether it's the number of games. Now, I suppose it's the same for every team, that in the Christmas time, there's obviously a lot of games, but it just looked a flat performance. I mean, you talked about, I talked about the game against West Ham where they had lots of possession, attempts on goal. I think with this one against Fulham, I think Fulham had more attempts on goal, and they were the better side. I think Saka did have an opportunity to level up, but he just absolutely skied it over the bar. But then Fulham did hit the bar as well, I think. So the best team won, the better team won. But the problem for me, I see with the Arsenal at this moment in time, is that you cannot afford to drop any points, really. Man City now with KDB back, they're going to be a different beast, a different animal. I can see City now going on one of these runs of 10 games on the bounce, they'll win. Liverpool playing tonight. I mean, in fact, what's your thoughts on Liverpool today? I mean, they're going to be buoyed by the Arsenal result. I think if they win, is that what, 5 points?
5 points clear, yeah. Them and Arsenal.
City do have a game in hand, and you'd expect City with that game in hand to win that game in hand. But certainly, what you don't want to be doing is almost having a two game gap between yourself and obviously the team that's at the top of the table. So what do you think today? Today, Liverpool, do you think it's going to be a straightforward performance? Newcastle have just, I mean, they seem to be struggling. They really are struggling with injuries. There isn't much depth. So I certainly, from my point of view, would expect an easy 3 points. So what's your thoughts today on Liverpool?
I think Liverpool, it's the last game, right? Salah, I think, before he goes off for duty with Egypt. I think Liverpool, yeah, there are moments in every season where you feel like as though this, and for whatever reason, it feels like it's always like you're the Monday night game. So it comes to a head where you're like, oh, this is our opportunity. Arsenal, if you remember, had that last season on a few occasions. Yes, they still let it slip at the end, although I would like to give Man City credit. But there are games where you feel like as though, oh, if we could get this win, that just gives us a perfect break. Remember, there's a break, obviously FA Cup duty there afterwards. So you want to kind of finish off the year. I know it's January the 1st, but you want to finish off this round of fixtures on a winning note. Liverpool are at home, so they fancy themselves at home against any team, including Man City. They will fancy themselves to win against a team that's struggling right now, right? Newcastle have had their own issues against suspensions, injuries. Their performances have tailed off probably more than any other team I can think of in terms of what their highest peak is, in terms of what they can offer in terms of performance, and yet some of the other kind of really shoddy performances that they've put forth lately. And no doubt there's some inquest going on as to how and why that's been allowed to happen, because they really are struggling in a lot of areas, injuries aside. I think Liverpool should have too much for them. There's always a little bit of pressure when you're playing under the kind of spotlight. Again, to your point, City look like they're coming back, but you always expected them to beat Sheffield United. I think the great thing about Liverpool is, I think Whereas with Arsenal, and this is a great thing, where with Arsenal, yes, they have to prove it to themselves that they can get over the line. And that is often the biggest hurdle, isn't it, Ayub?
Mm,
That kind of space between the ears. Whereas with Liverpool, they've got players who've been there, done it. They've won the biggest trophies, and I say that plural, titles,
mm,
Champions Leagues, playing in Champions League finals, FA Cup finals, and this squad's been together for quite some time. Yes, there's been some retooling we've spoken about in the midfield, but this team, the spine of it, the key protagonists are all players of the highest ilk at the highest level of form and kind of their peak period, right? You're talking Alisson, Van Dijk, Salah, Arnold's really taken another step offensively. So yeah, I think look, if they can get a win today, that puts them 3 points ahead of Villa, 5 points ahead of City, albeit City will have a game in hand. I think it just puts them in a good space. Many still feel it'll come down to Liverpool, Arsenal, and Man City. Let's see. I mean, that's yet to be proven. We'll see when it comes down to the final knockings. But I think it is a really important game because I think the last round of fixtures, especially when Arsenal drew against Liverpool, many were saying while City were contesting the World Club Championships that City had a good weekend and didn't play. I think if Liverpool were to drop points today, Man City will feel like, yeah, look, we've had our rough period. Let's
mm.
say this is normally when they come into their own, don't isn't it? You spoke about
Yeah.
KDB's return, Haaland's soon to return. You do expect them to come on strong, but yeah, Liverpool have got a fantastic opportunity right now to put some distance, and they'll want to just because of the fact that they are losing their talisman for a few games, I believe. So, yeah, huge game for them, huge opportunity, and it never hurts to have a decent points gap at the top of the table.
On the subject of Salah, how big an impact will it be? Because you rightly say, he's the talisman. He's the main man. He sort of pops up in key moments, perhaps not as often as he has done in previous years, but uh, how will it impact Liverpool going forward? Because it's a number of games. I mean, I'm not sure how many games he's not going to be available, but do you think it will be quite significant? Do you think they have sufficient cover?
Well, you're not going to have a more salary replacement, are you? I mean, no, no team would have two players in the same position of that ilk, right? Let's be very clear. I've seen some tables as to how many games he could miss depending on Egypt's progress in the competition. So we'll see how that plays itself out. He's clearly going to miss a couple of games. I think the key thing is you're not replacing him like for like. You're simply looking to just get some wins. Doesn't matter how they come.
Mm.
You're not. They're going to have to play a slightly different way, right? They don't have a right-footed, left-footed winger playing inside channel. I mean, they could play Harvey Elliott there, but it's a different profile of player altogether. So they're going to have to find different solutions. Jurgen Klopp is well equipped for that. The thing about Salah is, I mean, you're right. There are some games where you watch and you think, he's not perhaps at his absolute best. His numbers are still pretty decent. But I keep saying with players of his ilk, they tilt the field so strongly in their favor, in their direction, that all of the defensive attention is kind of garnered towards them, which means that others get a little bit more space and a little bit more kind of leeway to play, if that makes sense. So the defense is always so focused on where are they, right? Let's not leave the left back on an island. You saw what happened with Arsenal, left Zinchenko on an island, and you saw what happened, right? Salah can do that to the very best. So I just think losing him means that teams won't respect them as much. It happens because you're losing your best offensive player. I just think they've got enough quality, especially off the bench with Jota returning. He scored against Burnley. I think they've got enough just for those few games when he's missing, just to get enough wins. And I think that's all that matters. It's not about performances right now when you're missing your talisman. You're just looking to stumble through some wins. So how crucial will it be? Well, we'll see, right? When he's away, you're not going to get a like for like replacement, but I think Jurgen Klopp's got enough in that squad to still play a certain style, and no doubt he'll be asking some of his other top talented players, offensive players, Diaz, Nunes, Jota, to name a few, to come through. I don't see why they can't. They are top players.
And that's exactly what I would expect. I think if you're aiming to win the league, you cannot be just saying, "All right, we've lost our key man, so therefore it's going to be a struggle." I would expect the players at Liverpool. I mean, they've got an array of riches in the attacking sense. So I would certainly expect somebody to sort of say, "Right, okay, I'm Salah's not going to be there, but I'm sort of got to put my hand up and sort of make sure that we don't feel his loss." And that's what I would expect. So if I was a Liverpool supporter, I would certainly not be worried. And if Klopp is going to be concerned by Salah being away, then really to me that is not what I want to hear from the coach. Yes, he's a big loss. He's obviously a world-class player, but you are not top of the table just because of one player. So I would expect the other players to step up to the plate to make sure that that his loss is not felt. I mean, I'm not sure what games they have at this moment in time. I don't think they're playing any of the big teams. So maybe it's a fortunate time for Liverpool to lose Salah. But I don't even think they've got out of sort of second gear at this moment in time. This is why I think it's remarkable. Liverpool are top of the league, and I think that they've got plenty more to offer. Salah's not been on his A game, certainly. I think there's quite a few others who have not been on their A game. So that's another reason why I think if he was somebody who was outstanding this season, you could almost sort of say, you don't want to be losing Salah, who's sort of been absolutely on fire. I think he's been good at times. And he's one of those players that it's against the Arsenal. He could have a quiet game, but you always know there's a moment of brilliance in him. So I certainly, as a Liverpool supporter, would not be sort of thinking, all right, this is going to be catastrophic. They're not playing Arsenal. They're not playing Manchester City. They're not playing Aston Villa, I think. So it's not going to be against any of the major teams. But I would not expect his absence to have a major impact. Probably, I mean, I'm sure he's absolutely fired up today. He wants to leave with a bang, I hope. But for me, it's not a major issue at all.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you know what I'm going to say. If you buy a player that plays for an African country, that goes part and parcel of what you
Yeah,
think
yeah,
about, right?
absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't. You're absolutely right. You just, I guess, I don't think Liverpool fans are kind of complaining whatsoever. Again, that goes with. But it's the same for Andre Onana or others or what have you as well. So it goes into the
I
thinking
think
when
they'll
you
be delighted he's going on Honor. Don't worry about that.
although I think there are some issues there with this country as well. But look, at the end of the day, I think you're always, to your point, you're always going to miss a player of that talent and of that ilk. I just think they'll find different solutions. I mean, to your point about the level of competition, I mean, they've got a couple of cup games, Arsenal FA Cup third round, obviously the Carabao Cup games against Fulham, but they do have Bournemouth, Chelsea, maybe even Arsenal that he may miss the return
Mm.
Premier League game at the Emirates Stadium. And look, he's a miss. Of course, he is. He's a top player. But I think Liverpool, we're doing them a disservice if we're suggesting as though if there's no more Salah, I mean, that's part and parcel. I'm not. I didn't moan last year when they missed Saliba in that crucial stretch down the road, right? It's just par for the course. It is what it is. You've just got to get on with it. Nobody wants to hear it. But they are well positioned, well placed. Many of us thought, again, to your point, that they would challenge. They're right there. And again, I think City will be concerned that it's Liverpool heading the summit at this kind of halfway stage, because again, they're a team that can go toe to toe. City have gone toe to toe with them. Yes, they've come through a few times. Liverpool obviously walked the title in the COVID year, but City know this is a team of that is their equal in many respects, and definitely a coach that doesn't fear them. So we could be headed for one of those grandstand finishes, but we're a little way away yet. So I think right now it's a case of getting points in the bank.
Right. Just before we talk about the soap opera that is Man United, I just want to quickly touch upon it. It would be rude not to. Aston Villa. They had a 3-2 victory against 10-man Burnley. But what I want to talk about is the penalty. I mean, I've watched the highlights. I mean, I've only watched it from one angle, so I've not seen it from multiple angles. But it just looks the most ridiculously soft penalty. And I don't know. I mean, this is what it absolutely infuriates me that any professional footballer, if they were watching that, they would know that's a dive. I mean, I'm not sure if there's any contact. I presume there obviously must have been some sort of contact, but surely it's not just a touch that should be sufficient for a man to go down. Now, I'm absolutely crying out for referees to make a decision based on, right, was that sufficient for him to go down? I mean, he went down as if he's been shot by a sniper. So I was absolutely furious. Obviously, I'm sort of for George's sake as well. I was gutted. But this could be something that, I mean, if we keep on thinking that perhaps Aston Villa won't be in the mix, but if they are in the mix, this might be a crucial extra 2 points. So, what's your thought on the pen?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm in agreement with you. You know, my tolerance for penalties, it's quite high. I mean, you'd like penalties dished out willy-nilly based on our previous conversations, but I agree with you. I mean, look, crucial stage, and you want to get them right. I just think at times with penalties, what I don't like, and it's just the rules the way they are, is this idea of, well, if it's given, it's not going to be overturned, and if it's not given, VAR is not going to give it. I'm like, listen, it's either a foul or is it a foul? Just get to the right decision. They've re-refereed many incidents this season already, many that I can just talk about right now. I just think we also, as fans, have a responsibility. We're becoming a little bit desensitized sometimes to what is a penalty. We're just going with the flow because, oh, well, that was given last week. I mean, you saw the incident with Saliba yesterday. I don't know if you saw it with his yellow card. I thought it was a yellow card. I didn't have any issues with it. First thing I see on social media, well, Van Dijk got sent off for that, so that should be a wreck. I'm like, come on, guys. No two incidents are ever the same. There's nuance to everything. But I just think we've got to be smart about, and I think referees and the way penalties have been adjudicated. You remember with Wolves early on this season, Ayub. I mean, they got some really rough ones, right? You remember the
Mm.
famous one, I think, against was it? I think it was against Villa. I'm not sure. I agree with that. I think, look, I have a high tolerance for it. Not every touch is a penny. Just because 2 feet make contact, or is it enough for a player to go down like that? I just think referees have to be a bit smarter. Do I think the timing of the game, timing of the incident comes into it? No. Listen, if it's a penalty in the first minute, it could be a penalty in the 96th minute. But what you should be thinking about a little bit is, it's late in the game. I can see why players might be trying a few things,
Mm.
let's say, and maybe going down a little bit more theatrically than others, because in the dying embers, you've always got a chance to maybe chance your arm. I'm with you. Look, I don't like soft ones. Little touches here, a knee touch in, if it's a fully fledged foul, clearly disadvantaging the offensive team, fair enough. But I'm not sure this one quite met the threshold.
But Aston Villa, I mean, they bounced back from that defeat from Manchester United, so they're
Yeah,
still in the mix.
they're still in the mix, but I'm not. Listen, Burnley scored with 10 men. I mean, Burnley are fighting relegation. I'm not. Listen, they got the win in the end. To your point, I mean, dubious penalty. I mean, they were fortunate to score the penalty, but I just, they just going through a little rut. But look, you want to win those games when you're just
Mm.
struggling a little bit. And again, for them, top four or Champions League spot would be absolutely fantastic. They would bite your hand off right now. So I don't think they're playing consistently well enough. Let's just say that to challenge for the title. From what I've seen in the recent games, I thought United again. That was a ridiculous game in the end.
Mm.
But they're in there. They got to win, and I think if they can get over this tricky period and get back to some good form, and what I mean by form is generally a quality performance, defensive and offensive. Let's see where they stand when it comes to game weeks 28, 29, 30. And if they're still in with a shout, then they'll fancy making some noise.
I think they just keep finding ways to win games. I don't think they've been outstanding, but I think they're very pragmatic. I think that's certainly something that Unai Emery is doing. That they they're not expansive. I mean, they've got decent players because you're not second for no reason, but they just seem to somehow find a way to get the results. Right. We'll talk about again a team that we seem to be talking about virtually every single week. There's highs, there's lows, and it's a low again for Manchester United after the high of beating Aston Villa, dramatic victory. They fell short against Nottingham Forest. So that I'm not sure sort of whether it was an okay performance, but United fans, they must be just going absolutely nuts. They don't know whether they're coming or going. So I don't know what is happening with Manchester United. Does it need a manager's? Does it need a change of coach? I mean, is that what the problem is? Because this is Jekyll and Hyde. Against Aston Villa, they were outstanding for a portion of the game. Against Forest, I mean, Forest are they're at the bottom for a reason. So they've obviously got a new manager, Nunes. I don't know. I mean, it's a strange one with Manchester United. I mean, I mean, I don't think they should get rid of the manager, but do you think that it is time for them to just decide, right, we've got to either stick or twist?
A lot will come down to whether or not they think they can achieve a fourth spot with Eric Ten Hag at the helm. I'm with you. I'd like philosophically for him to be given time. But it's been such a poor season. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. I mean, I was speaking to somebody over the weekend who took umbrage with your predictions and my predictions about United probably stumbling to fourth spot. And he also commented on our episode saying that they just don't score enough goals. And to be fair, if it wasn't for Matt Turner's uh, absolutely shambolic clearances, they wouldn't have scored against Forest either. So he was probably onto something. I mean, they don't score enough goals. That is pretty clear. And they didn't deserve anything from the Forest game, I thought, to be honest with you. I mean, look, they are a poor team. There's no other word for it. I watched the game from start to finish. Forest weren't great, but they started both halves, I thought, quite well. So I thought Forest might either going to score early in the first half or early in the second half. They did score kind of relatively early in the second half. Really well worked, but again, poor defending. 3, 4 passes cutting right through for unopposed strike inside the box. I mean, that is poor defending, and they've conceded a lot of those goals. I think there was something going around on Twitter about the similar nature of these cutback goals that teams are scoring against United. Obviously, Brighton scored similar, Bournemouth scored similar, now Forest as well. Lovely finish for Morgan Gibbs-White for the second one. I thought it was a really nice, well taken finish. But the issues, I mean, you asked me the question, do you think it's time? I think, in my opinion, he won't start next season. I just don't see him at the helm. I think they're going to perhaps stumble through this season. If they get fourth, great. I'm not sure that's going to save him either, to be
Mm,
fair, because I think it just seems as though there's no real inspiration. The squad, there's some rumors about Varane's kind of 1 year contract extension not being triggered. I think that's all by the by, and that's perhaps some noise from Radcliffe and Brailsford that these are some of the more, they're going to go in a different direction in terms of how they want to build a squad profile. But I just think they'll probably look at this manager and think, is it the fact that he's been compromised by all of what's gone around him? And then if we support him, how long is that going to take? Because this is not a quick fix, is it? This is not a team
mm,
that all of a sudden you think, oh yeah, next year if they get one or two things right. No, I mean,
mm,
look at the goal difference. We're beyond. We're in January. I mean, this is a poor team. They've got some wins. How many good quality 90-minute performances have they had this season? Very few. I
mm.
mean, even Villa was, to your point, a singular half. You left at half time, getting booed by the home faithful. So look, they've been very fortunate. They are very fortunate to be in the position they're in. I think if you look at it, I think kind of if you look at the XG as well, um, I just don't think he gets to start, or I don't think he gets the privilege to start next season. I think once Brailsford and Sir Jim Ratcliffe had the rest of this season, I think they'll probably come to the conclusion that it's probably better if we have a clean change. He also seems a little out of ideas. I mean, look at that performance of you. You'd think after Villa,
Mm,
I found it
mm.
hard to explain the Arsenal kind of downturning performance after their couple of good results. But after Villa, you're thinking, right, we're bouncing. It's Forest. Yes, Forest are decent, but let's go there and impose our personality on the game. We're Man United Football Club. How can Nottingham Forest be the better team? And how many teams this season have been the better team against Man United? And
Mm.
again, they didn't really do much to score the goal as well. I mean, it was a lovely, again, one of the players we've raved about, Garnacho, again, great,
Yeah.
gets the slide, wonderful pass, and Rashford wasn't having a good game, to be fair, puts it away in a lovely finish. But aside from that, they didn't really, yeah, a couple of things later on, and they were piling on a little where you thought, oh, they could get something. But we've seen this all too often, all too frequently, and that suggests something fundamentally wrong. This team's not together, they're not cohesive. Clearly, there's no real morale, in my opinion, within the team. Yeah, you can put together a 3-2 performance, but that's when, to your point, you've lost the game. There's no
Yeah.
other choice
Yeah.
but to start playing. Liverpool, again, three-man midfield that was very defensive. And yeah, they had a few moments. I thought it was a very spirited performance. But what I mean is they don't seem a cohesive footballing unit where you're thinking, all right, yeah, I can see what they're trying. Oh, they were unlucky, lots of chances, lots of opportunities, dominating possession, all the rest of it. And for that not to be the case after so much money spent is quite shambolic, to be honest with you. I don't think he may see the end of this season. I'm not so sure he gets the credit in the bank. Last year gave him the credit in the bank, but if you this season, I mean, it's been a lot of nothingness to me. There's nothing positive that's come out of this season so far.
I agree. I agree. I think I mean, I do think there's a number of players that need to be moved on, but I think they need to be looking at the longer picture now. They need to be identifying somebody. I mean, you've talked, I think, quite often of De Zerbi. Maybe he is. It's time for a change because at Brighton, he's he's never really going to win anything at Brighton. It's and he's a manager that's obviously impressed. So maybe it's time for United to decide, right, we're going to go in a different direction. We're going to get rid of some of the players that we have who are bad eggs. And I think they are. There are some bad eggs at Manchester United. I've never thought Ten Hag is a charismatic manager. I mean, I don't know whether that's a criteria that you need at Manchester United, but I think it's such a high profile club that you need a certain charisma to be managing Manchester United. And I think De Zerbi does have that. I think there is a certain sort of star quality to the man. And I think maybe for De Zerbi as well that I think he's come to the end of the line at Brighton. I mean, I think he's done as much as he possibly can do, and he needs to move on. I think this is almost the perfect time that perhaps they should tap him up if he's interested. Then maybe Ten Hag sort of sees the season through, but then next season, United, I think next season is absolutely pivotal. They have got to decide what they're doing because they can't be just an also run. It's too huge a club for it just to be going through the motion. So I think Ten Hag, not this season. I think they'll keep him, but certainly for next season, I can't see him.
Yeah, agreed. Just something you said there just got me thinking. I mean, one of the big frustrations at times that I've had with Arsenal this season is that, again, I mentioned it earlier, they've not found the solutions to when teams are doubling Saka. And they're able to double Saka because Arsenal are not playing that same open, expansive style that they were last year. It's very hard to double when it's a kind of a very athletic game, a very spaced out game, and it's very open and where you're trusting your defenders. Arsenal play a very slow and methodical game, which means your wingers are going to get doubled just simply because the defensive unit is quite compact. But at least with Arsenal, you can see in a sense how they're going about trying to break teams down. And yes, yesterday was a very rare performance. You don't see that from Arsenal all too often. With United, you watch them and you're thinking, I don't see it. I don't see what they are consistently doing. And where yesterday, when Arsenal came under pressure, it was probably one of the first few times where I thought they don't quite have an idea of how to go about breaking Fulham down, which was a very surprising thing, by the way. Whereas with United, you just feel like there's nothing to lean on with muscle memory or those patterns that you work on time and time again, where you're like, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we break teams down. This is what you're going to do. We know what it was like under Ferguson. Yes, you've got world-class players who've won stuff, which gives you the confidence, inherent belief that you're going to get back into games. But you knew what the ideas were. Pour it on, get it wide, get it wide. You've got great crosses of the ball, whether it's Gary Neville, Beckham, Giggs, whoever it may be. Great world-class strikers that they had in their absolute pomp. But you knew how they were going to try and get back into games or how they were going to try and get goals. This United team, I'd be very interested to see what the fans want right now. I think the fans would be happy with 1 or 2 years of, listen, we know we're not going to be in the title hunt, but what we want is a manager to come in and start clearly putting together a visible and a tangible playing style. And I think De Zerbi is clearly that coach, right? That's what he does. You can see his imprint on Brighton. You know how they're going to play. High risk, high reward. They've not kept a clean sheet, but it's still, like you said, maybe it has come to the end of his kind of tenure there in terms of the players they've lost. It's no doubt. I think he'd jump at the chance. I think this is a manager that's going somewhere. I do rate him very highly just because I think you mentioned that force of personality that he has. I think he'd command that Man United kind of dugout the way he is, the way his spirit is. I think other coaches respect him. If you speak to many of the young coaches right now, and they speak about, I think I saw a piece on Cesc Fabregas, who's working in Como, and he spoke about it as well. That De Zerbi is one of the few coaches that he really studies hard and what have you. So he's well respected and well revered. I think that's the man could be or would be a good sound choice if they do opt to go in a different direction. I just think right now what United need isn't who's going to win us the title. It's a case of who's going to build something for us systematically where we're like, that's our playing style, that's our philosophy, and that's going to get us back into the big time, maybe in the next 2 to 3 years. But in the immediate short term, Ayub, I don't see any prospects whatsoever right now.
Well, that's our thoughts on United. Well, United fans, I know there's a number of United fans who watch the show. Drop your comments in. What do you think? Do you think Ten Hag should stay? Do you think he should go? Do you think he should go right now? And who do you think should replace Ten Hag? Is it De Zerbi or is it somebody else? So pop your comments down. Let us know exactly what your thoughts are. Right. And on that note, I think it's time to call it a day. But before we go, what's your predictions on Liverpool, Newcastle?
I'm going to go for a high. I'm just tempted to go 3-2. feel like an entertaining New Year's Day game. But I'll go Liverpool 3-1.
4-1 Liverpool. I think it will be quite a comfortable win. I think Newcastle are all over the place at the moment. So on that note, I think it's time to bid you a fond farewell. But before we do that, do the usual good stuff. Subscribe, share, smash a like, all of that good stuff. Join our Twitter account or X account. All right. So and let me wish you again a great New Year, a peaceful New Year. Stay safe. Whatever your wishes are, may they be fulfilled. So until we see you the next time, stay on side.